Digital fashion, society. Digital fashion, society. Digital fashion, society. Digital fashion, society.
If you joined and you're wondering why we're quiet, we're just eagerly waiting for everyone to to join, and then we will start the conversation that everyone's been waiting for. So I'm just going to keep admitting everyone, which is great to see this little turnout. 18 people have come on time. So thank you and welcome. But yeah, let's get started. Guys, this is a long awaited. We had to postpone only because of um schedules and everything over the holiday. It was kind of crazy to try to get this date today. And we're actually got a few things that have changed. A few people have changed, and one person actually is under the weather. So Louise from in-house is under the weather. So we all wish her well and speedy recovery. But thank you for coming today. This conversation is really for designers, technical designers, freelancers in the creative fashion space, digital fashion professionals who actually use AI, who actually use AI and 3D, either in their day-to-day work or they use it for their creative endeavors. So we have kind of covered the space on different types of users and different types of people for this kind of conversation. So we're not just talking about AI. We're talking to people who are actually using it. It's not all about the hype. It's not all about following the headlines or the latest post or whoever's post is getting the most clicks. There are lots of conversations out there. Today is more about not really about the good, the bad, and the ugly, but that's what it's called because that's how some people kind of view it. But today we're going to focus on what's really working. How does it work? Why does it work? And so much of that is being portrayed in fashion. There's so many different opinions, some good and some bad. Some people who use the AI kind of, have that duality in their life where they see the bad effects of AI, but they actually use it in their experience and it's kind of good. So this is all about where does that responsibility lie? How do you use it with your skill, your creativity? Where is that fine line of human judgment? And does it still matter in our workflows? So we're going to be talking about all of those different types of things here. And our questions are kind of based on some of the things that users have sent in and some of the things that, in all of our professions, we kind of cover and kind of look deeply at on a day-to-day basis. Um, Yep. So we're going to be talking a lot about, like I said, the workflows. What happens when things start to shift? What happens when AI starts to do more in the creative process? What do people do? Where do people land? And how does it affect the culture that we're in right now? So this is some of the things that we can go over today. This conversation is just the tip of the iceberg. I hate to use that term, but it is really only just covering some of the things. We can't really get into all of the things because it can just go on and on and on forever. So this may be another, another part to this conversation, but we'll let our panelists start to get into the conversation, and then we can get a lot of different perspectives and some grounded experience. Like I said, these are people that are behind the scenes with AI. These are people that are like programming and using it in their creative process. And of course, me, that I touch everything. I touched some of the code, I touched some of the 3D experience and also the AI experience I'm getting into. So, let us dive in. And I'm going to give our panelists some time to just a minute or two to just tell everybody about yourself and what your experience with AI is at this current stage. So let's start with Monica. Monica, welcome.
Hello, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Durrell, for inviting me.
Yes.
My name is Monica Fabretti Bortolani. I've been working with 3D as a 3D technical designer for over 10 years. I've worked with big brands along this time with Adidas, which was with you as well. Fila, Maison Margiela, Diesel, many big brands, big animation studios like Fox Films, digital influencers like Sam from Samsung. And I own a digital fashion studio for 7 years now and a 3D fashion school with over 400 students all over the globe. So I've been through all the ups and downs of this area. And I'm an old school designer, so I've seen AI evolving inside those softwares all along the way. So
Mhm.
we used to do many things manually, and now we see many buttons, just click and have it done tools. And I've been using AI as a mentor as well with some brands that are my customers. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And then we like to welcome Cam, who is from Make the Dot. And Cam is taking over for Emily and Theron. I'm not sure if Emily's coming. She may pop in, you know. But Cam, welcome and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and just a little background on yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a head of product and design at Make the Dot, which is a fashion design platform for concept to sample stages. Um, my background is a bit of a mix in game design, as well as agency growth and selling larger agencies. And then I moved over into product and early stage startups around 2014, and eventually saw a few successes and saw AWS up close and personal, and eventually started to focus on founding designer roles before I got to Make the Dot.
Awesome. Awesome. And you're here to get us into that AI. I know you know everything that's going on behind the
Yeah, I
scenes
mean, back
in
in
the
the day when we
Python.
were learning AI, we
Yeah.
have to do it all, whatever the data's going.
Yep, exactly. And then we have Matt from Style 3D. Matt, tell us about yourself and what have you been doing these days and what's going on?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Matt Bakum. I'm Director of Operations for Style 3D in the US. I've been in this industry for about 20 years doing technical implementations of 3D and other fashion tech. I got my start at Optitex. I worked there for a bunch of years. I worked at Gerber. I worked at Lectra. Now I'm working here. Um, my responsibilities right now are go to market and bringing AI and technology to big fashion brands, but my background is in technical implementation. So I'm here to talk about what can be done, but also what really happens and how to actually use these tools and what breaks and stuff like that. So here to have like an open, honest discussion about what's real and what's not.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for that and welcome to our roundtable. This will be recorded. It is being recorded, so it will be put on YouTube after I do my little editing. So everybody knows that. You can come back and take a look at that. And I'll post it in the Digital Fashion Society in a thread for this actual event. So let's start with our questions, guys. I want to start with Matt. Matt, what do you think you mentioned it, you hit on it. What is the biggest misunderstanding about AI that you see, like at the maker level? What are people not understanding?
So at the maker level, there's a lot of misunderstanding about like what are the intentions for these tools, and I think you have to kind of look at each vendor and understand what is it that they're building to understand that. But for example, I hear a lot of the times like, oh, I don't want to use a tool that might do what I can do because it devalues what I'm doing. And I think that is the core like misunderstanding about AI in general. And we don't really have to look at abstract examples of times where that fear was overblown and proved to be overblown. Like just a couple of years ago, we were afraid that the critical thinking in writing was going to go away, but just because we have ChatGPT and LLMs that can speak at a PhD level on like most topics. Are we all done writing? Are we all done just passing off the job to ChatGPT? That doesn't happen, right? And when it does happen, you can spot it because it's irresponsible use. You can see when somebody's sending an unedited, uncritical ChatGPT response to a LinkedIn post or whatever. It reads as such. And I think the same has parallels for every avenue of work. When you look at it through the cynical lens of, yeah, this is a replacement tool, then that to me falls under irresponsible use. When you look at it through the lens of this is a tool built upon empowering people at both the employee level and at the individual creator level as independence, that's really powerful and a part of the discussion that gets kind of glossed over a lot.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think the misunderstanding that AI is actually the creative in the equation and not really the facilitator or the helper. I think that is also a misunderstanding that people think that AI is actually doing the thing when it's really just helping you get to a point or helping you along the way to that end result that you've been looking for. Monica, what do you think about that?
I actually think that AI amplifies, like it helps designers, for example, to avoid repetitive tasks that they used to do in the past. So for example, use AI generations for templates, for mood boards and inspiration, for concepting, but the real reason, the real mind behind it has to be human. The person that's going to take decisions based on the company's culture, which item is going to be a part of this mood board that resonates with the brand, for example. That's really this thinking. It's very important to be human. The machine cannot replace us on this area, and I think that's a misunderstanding as well. AI just helps us avoid many iterations of a product and helps us make better decisions, right?
Right, I agree. Kim, you want to chime in on that? Because I know being on the product side of an actual company that uses AI, and helps customers with their AI journey, you get to see a lot of misconceptions. So what will you say about that? It's a misunderstanding.
I think the biggest misunderstanding that people have that it's going to generate ideas in general. Um, it can give you instructions. It can give it instructions, but it doesn't create ideas. It doesn't really know what ideas really are. And so I think the biggest misconception is that you're you're responsible for leading this outcome, right? And I think the hardest time in history was when Google search showed up because people didn't realize that the hardest pattern in UX was thinking of an idea and then searching for it. It's not that easy. You have to really think of a lot to concisely put it into a sentence and say, "Hey, Google, what do I want?" Well,
Mm,
ChatGPT is it's making people think a lot harder, right? And that means context. And I think what people have to potentially humble themselves in is that they didn't really have ideas before. They had instructions. And a lot of
mm,
people might need to humble themselves in that they're not good at creating instructions. And so the biggest misconception to me is that we have to slow. I mean, it's so fast now that you really, really, really have to go to pen and paper if you really want to get anything from it. You have to think in such abstracts. You have to cover the whole board before you even type a word. If you really want what you really want, I think the control element
mhm.
comes from those who really, really, really think before they type.
You know, that is such a good point that you brought up because I often find myself If I'm using ChatGPT or if I'm prompting for something, I find myself having to step away and to really think about how I'm communicating because every AI we know does not interpret everything that you say, the way you want it to be said or the way you want it to be understood. And I think that's also a misunderstanding that people are, and everybody has their own way of explaining something. So, like Monica will explain something, the same thing that I will explain, and she might say it in a reverse. Or I might say it, a different way, and we're all trying to get the same result from the AI, ChatGPT, or whatever other AI that you're prompting in or asking these things. And it's funny that you say that because sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, how am I communicating this? Or sometimes I even find myself, especially in ChatGPT, saying, hold on, I didn't ask you that. Like,
Honestly,
wait
it's
a
the
minute,
first
that's not
time.
where I'm going with this, because it can just
Yeah,
kind of spin. So you have to have that knowledge to just kind of reel it in and fine tune it exactly what it is that you want. So Kim, let me ask you another question. It's like, do you think that these tools are genuinely improving the workflow? So you're having to like jump in, jump out, kind of fine tune. Is it improving or is it adding more? Sometimes I think it's adding more to our workflow than helping. So what is your take
sure.
on that?
Well, I think like anything else, if you ask for and you have more hands, that means you can get more done. And just so in this scenario, if let's say I had 100 assistants just because I typed something in, that doesn't mean one that I'm good at giving out instructions like we just talked about.
Mhm.
I also have to check my emotions because emotions now are this new part of the platform. Like you used to just give an instruction. If you yelled at somebody, it didn't really matter. They had to do what you wanted. But you could actually, your emotional output could actually change your output when it comes to
Mm,
this. That's something that is sort of invisible in this process. And so when I say when people are creating, if I had 10 more friends helping me, I should expect 10 more out, 10 times the output. Now, that means I also have to be okay with 10 times the reviews and 10 times the process of culling down into a simple output. Because just
mm,
because I have 1,000 ideas, what I call ideas, right, or 1,000 instructions I put out, doesn't mean any of them are good ideas. And so I might now have more ideas, but I might have to create my workflow around generating ideas that can now, what are the checks and balances? Is that pass? Is that pass? And so I think the process of getting reviews and slowing down the pass, we have to be faster with reviews now because the review process needs to generate the next step. Versus in the past, review sort of bounce back and forth between do we really need to review? How many customers? Are we smart enough? I think we have the internal product sense. And in reality, like everyone failed in different ways because I think of this platform or these tools akin to like how many people are successful with working with an offshore team that doesn't speak your language. And that's the same amount of people who are going to be successful with these tools because you have to be very patient. You have to stay up late at night. You have to learn a new language. You have to listen to people who you don't understand. You have to
mm,
parse a lot. You have to listen to them say wrong a lot. Yeah, they're going to be wrong a lot. And so I think if you've worked in contracting, if you worked across different time zones, you work with different people, different languages, you're already going to be in a better position. But the next step is I've gotten to the finish line, but I actually need to take it apart again. Gotten to the finish line, take it apart again, versus I'm working towards this final outcome.
yeah. Yeah. I think the editing is really one of the biggest things that is part of the workflow now. I wouldn't say it's taken longer. It's just like you said, working with a bigger team with more information and more guardrails that you need to put up. I think, Matt, you've kind of with the whole, I want to say, explosion of Style 3D AI over the past year, you've seen the different workflows and how people are using the AI within the space. Like, what do you find is the difference from like a 3D workflow to an AI workflow? Is it helping? Is it facilitating things faster? Or what is your actual stand on that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no either or, right? And there's like I hear a lot of people like, "Oh, I don't want to use AI in my workflow," and people probably don't realize that they already are, but they have
Mm,
been for years, right? It's invisibly worked its way into a bunch of tools that we're already using. So there is no either or, either 3D or AI. It's 3D plus AI plus human judgment, right? That's the combination that works, right? So 3D is the source of truth. It's the continuity layer that tells everybody, okay, this is design intention that meets with producible product, producible
mm,
2D underpinnings, right? You can build AI around that, but that truth remains the core. So what you're building are the pathway from design intention to 3D. So you have a really quick way of saying, and Cam, I like your example of using Google because technically these are all really complicated search engines, right? The task is find me a style that's close to my intention and let me work with it. And that's what we do in Style 3D. We can say, hey, here's an image. And again, right to your point, right, you have to think critically about how to write this prompt. We have an AI for that part of things. Maybe you don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out a two-paragraph prompt to perfectly describe the sketch in front of you. You just want to give it the sketch. The tools in front of us can actually do a pretty good job at interpreting imagery and then turning that into a search. And then you can then modify that search and then find something and use, again, your judgment is the critical point there, right? The system curates a bunch of results for you. You choose which of those is appropriate. From there, you choose what to do to it. You choose how the pattern gets edited. You choose what the materials look like. You choose the fit. You choose everything. So again, I think Sylvia Simchek also mentioned this, that like the people who have to interact with the output of these tools should be experts in those fields, right? You need to know what you're seeing in order to properly interpret it. So while I think there is this trend with efficiency in big organizations where you'll see big orgs kind of slim down a little bit and bigger teams may get smaller. I think what you don't really consider is that, sure, that's happening, but the individuals who are around are now empowered to do what a big brand previously was only able to do. Right. So now if you're an independent, you have resources to do digital photography. You can get to 3D assets really quickly. You can build the entire platform with a very, very small team with this minimal investment versus a big brand who had to invest, a few $100,000s to get MOQs and to market into merchandise. Right now, there may be smaller teams, but more teams to play on. And I think that's an important distinction because, yeah, we tend to think of this as like a zero-sum game, but I think that when we add these technologies, we find more activity around them that requires experts, not less. And I think I've deviated from your question a bit, but I
No,
wanted
it's
to
okay because I mean, this whole conversation I feel is going to be a deviation from, from what we're asking because it's evolving every day and it's evolving in our workflows, like just to get back, Monica, you have incorporated AI. I don't want to say, recently because like Matt pointed out, it's been in, underlined in everything that we've been used to in the digital world. But how has the AI really improved your workflow on a creative level?
Oh yeah, I use AI pretty much at the first steps and at the very end because for ideation, for example, to bring my sketches to reality and make a sense of what we work, in fact, before going to straight to 3D, right? So it's a very nice tool to have a starting point, and this makes my 3D workflow much faster because I know exactly what I will do next. And in the end, when I'm done, I need a realistic outcome, maybe some animations. I use AI again. But right now, for example, in Style 3D, we have some pattern generations, but our critical evaluation of what is really going to work, it's very important. So I cannot say AI, it's full tool that's going to help me all the way through the process. I need my critical thinking during the process and evaluating the fit, the fabric, the texture, and then jump to AI in the very end. So I use at the very beginning mostly and at the end. That's how my workflow happens a lot, and it's super fast with it.
Yeah, I think it's super fast too. Just coming from a time where we used to, and you know about this, we used to use Blender to render, and we used to like
I
wonder
know.
why Blender was so slow. And like we used to
Oh my
fight
goodness.
through all of the, getting those beautiful, beautiful images at the end. So I can see where, pushing that button at the end of your whole creative process is opening up a new world,
Yeah, like
with
with
AI.
yeah, with Style 3D real-time render, we like cut that in half, much more than half, right? Because now we don't need that anymore. Because before that, I used to go all the way to Unreal Engine to render because it
Yeah,
took like forever, right?
yeah.
So
But it was
things are,
faster, right? It was faster.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. It's like I said, everything is evolving. This conversation will definitely evolve as we go along. I think this is a key for you because you use your expertise for clients and client work, right? So how
Yeah.
has this affected your freelancing or your hireability or your, or a hybrid of whatever that is? How has that affected you?
Yeah, to me that really strengthened my the perception of my work, because we can see that AI is shrinking execution only roles, but
Hmm.
it expanding hybrid works. When we talk about hybrid works, that like those that can go from creativity to technology and production, are really more valuable right now. I've seen many 3D fashion designers working as freelancer that just shifted areas or are going back to work in company because they are not finding work. But when you
Hmm.
really do, uh, um, they are valuing more people that knows what to keep, what to discard, what will actually work like in the real world, and this critical sense of things, right? So to me, as a freelancer, you need to be part designer, part technical, and part strategist. And
Yeah.
that's very important to remain relevant in this market.
Yeah, it's the lines are also being blurred. Like you and I have talked about this a little bit.
Yeah,
It's funny, companies don't really know so much about the AI space and how it affects creativity. More users, more people that are in the trenches actually using the tools they do. But I find now that their lines are being blurred as far as like who's hiring for what types of positions in AI and what you might have to know. When you join a company, you may join a company as one role, but you may end up using your AI tools or your 3D tools at another level inside of that same role.
yeah. And,
I
I can
know,
say as a mentor, for example, it's very challenging to convince people like the market has changed. You need to be a multitasking person. And
yeah,
we've seen that from the very beginning of 3D era, because we had to learn pattern to work with 3D. For example, if you are a designer and you want to work with 3D, you need to learn a bit of pattern making. So it's kind of a hybrid as well, right?
yeah.
And
I
right now
think
we have
people are now
AI.
the more AI is coming onto the scene, people are now starting to value the 3D pattern making aspect a little bit more. Like it's not just, oh, I'm going to make this look pretty in 3D. It's like it has to actually function. It has to look like what it's going to look like in AI. If that's going to be the realist version of what you're making, that 3D has to follow up. Like it can't be such a gap in the process, in the production process. So it's true.
Yeah.
And I know, Cam, you work with designers from the conception part of it. Like there was a mention about mood boards, working with mood boards, and Make the Dot is really all about starting the process of fashion design and now integrating AI. What do you think about the skills that people are now learning, or now freelancers are starting to really lean towards in the space?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we kind of keep touching on is how fast things are going, right? So if someone can complete their job in a month for the whole year, what happens now, right? And proving that there's a scalability to what you're putting out is, I think, everybody's new job. It's a new expectation for everybody. So,
Mm,
speed is now everybody's job. It's no longer, hey, some of us are fast and some of us are meticulous. It's, we're expected to be fast and you're also expected to be meticulous. If you hand off M dashes, you're going to look kind of crazy. And so I think about a lot of the designers coming into our platform, the mood process, to be honest, I harp on this again, like I want everybody to just know that your ideas are not as good as you think they are. That's just true. We're all not going to make good things all the time. And so the thing is, we have to table is that the people who are good carrying some amount of context or framework that's really clear and easy to pass away to someone else. And so
mm,
if you're going to be good at communicating, you're going to have to come up with frameworks. Because if we're all fast, be fast at making a framework, be fast at being able to pass off your big ideas so that someone can pick it up. We're all expected. I remember when social media started to take off, and I was like, oh, we're all expected to be directors now. And then social media went up again, and it was like, no, we're all expected to be producers. I can't just be a director; I have to produce it. And then it was like, oh no, you have to be the investor too. And it was like, all right, now we have a lot of jobs, and that's why social media exhausts itself. Where now with
Mhm.
AI, we really have to think more critically about there has to be a tipping point. And I think to Monica's thing, she was saying it's like we have to have a cone of skills. It can't be, you can't go crazy. You can't go, I'm good at everything. I think that's going to lose your context. It's going to lose the framework of what you're trying to share. And so you really have to choose maybe 2 or 3 skills you have now, maybe. And I was just talking the other day about updating their profiles. Like they were multidisciplinary. I can't even say I hate that word. I hate that word,
You
but
said it though.
designer just means you can design, but that's what it doesn't really, it confuses me. But she was like, I'm a multidisciplinary designer. I was like, get rid of that word. um, you really need to figure out how you're perceived, what it is, the framework and communication you're sharing, and will you be accepted as an expert? Because
Mhm.
if you can't be accepted as the expert, none of this matters. Because everyone can type what you just typed. Everyone can say what you just said now. Everyone can put on a teleprompter and read it on the screen and looks and sound smart. I can go become a LinkedIn influencer tomorrow. So the question is, am I real? And I think the
Mhm.
part where you have the time to put into how do you think about things? What is the ethos? What do I come from? Like, what are those thoughts? And so I think, my little 2 cents at the end is that, for a lot of the things I do in our platform is about control because I want the designer to have control. We don't have prompting at all in our platform. You can't prompt. And so, but you can sketch, and we'll make sure our sketch adherence is really clear so that the people who really want to be strong at sketching can, and the people who want to be strong at something else can. And so it's really about control and making sure you have the most control. And so if
Mhm.
you approach design and everything we're doing into the future as how do I get the most control over my own output, not how fast I can be. It's really control at the end that you want to be able to take credit of, and actually people will be able to look at you as a trusted source of information because we know we're all entering a phase of fake information. So
Yeah.
you being a trusted source of information is going to be this new superpower, to be honest.
Yep, it's true. And it's hard for people, even like myself, to have all of the skills, but then how do you put that all into one bubble, which is kind of where I am personally right now. It's like, wait a minute, I look at everything with a technical eye, but there's also, this creative process that I started off my whole career with, and like where do these things lie, especially in using AI? But Matt, do you want to chime in on that? Like, I think you can hone in on what happens when workflows break. What happens when AI breaks your workflow?
So, I mean, I have to ask specifically, like, if the question is what happens when AI breaks the workflow, you have to consider like what was the workflow and what was your
Mm,
purpose for bringing AI into the workflow? Like what? So, and this is now me speaking from like a completely outside of Style 3D. Like, there's a big problem in software and software tech where we talk about tools, we talk about AI, we talk about 3D. What we don't talk about is the desired outcome, right?
mm,
Like what broke is dependent on what it is you were trying to do and why adding AI to it got you away from that. So if you're saying, okay, I want to design and my AI gives me a bunch of ideas, but they're all terrible, then it broke your workflow, right? It broke the thing that you were trying to do. But if AI gives you a bunch of ideas that you can curate and say, hey, that's a good idea, good enough that it gives me inspiration that I'm going to build my own thing, that's where the real power comes in. So it can happen. I'm not going to say it happens a lot because for us, because it's Style 3D, we have not built an individual siloed tool. And I think there's another issue is that there's a lot of point solutions that do one thing really, really well. There's not a whole lot of ecosystems that understand the broader workflow of like you're a designer whose job is to get the intention in your head onto the screen in some way,
mm,
either in a sketch, in a 3D asset, ideally in a 3D asset that's actually underlined with producible 2D patterns, right? So the path to get to that has to be real. And when you're building that path, it can break in all sorts of ways. You can feed it bad data, right? You can build it upon a pattern database that's not at all ready for production. And if you're doing design workflows, that's fine. Intention matters, right? But if your intention is to get it to production and to fix the broken link between design intention and production, then you really have to think about every link in the chain and understand what each thing is doing for you, right? Back to the very first question, and I'll address it now to senior leaders. Like, what is the biggest problem? And I think it's that People are trying to shoehorn AI in places where it simply doesn't belong because AI is, as friends in the industry will say, the baby in the room, getting all the attention. And while it's super exciting to fit the need to fit AI into a workflow, it needs to be really well thought out for it to make sense. In the same way that adding 3D to workflows didn't work for everybody just because 3D is great, right? It needed to be implemented really, really well, really thoughtfully. There needed to be change management included. You need to understand that there are people behind these desks who need to use these tools. And I think that's the biggest issue. It's not always with the tool, it's with how they get rolled out and implemented and how they're expected to be used within these orgs that breaks.
Yeah. I think in my experience, I think AI really breaks the workflow when you bring it in and then people don't know what to do with it. So you have a certain expectation that AI is going to fill this lane or it's going to, save you time in this way, but then you don't consider, like you said, the actual people that are using it. If they're not familiar with the tools or if they don't have the right outcome, it really slows things down and it adds frustration. I work in an industry or in a company that has dual companies or teams, I want to say, and one team kind of works this way and they're going to implement AI because they don't have a pipeline for sketching or prints or whatever, so they're going to use AI in that lane, but then there's another one that has a whole pipeline that the creatives don't understand why they would even need the AI, right? So where does it fit? That is a big conversation. And if the C-level people are not really, ready to have that, um, then we lost Monica. So
And again,
Monica,
just
come
they're
back.
moving.
Yeah. But yeah,
I'm
but
sorry, and
go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Just to the point that they're moving so quickly as an individual trying to keep up, right? That's another thing that breaks, right? You may be accustomed to one tool and it's the king of the hill for 1 week. And then next month there's another AI model that blows it out of the water, right?
Right.
So being inflexible to that is also a big deal. And then you may have committed resources to learning, like, okay, now I learned how to talk to ChatGPT and now Claude's kicking its butt. Oh man, I got to learn how to talk to Claude now. Like that can be really frustrating, and it's a whole other part of this. So
Yeah.
something to consider, right? The ground's constantly moving, and it's very difficult to keep up.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And, the more companies depend on AI without really understanding the actual people use, that's where we're going to see things break down and people not trust AI. Unfortunately, they're going to say, we don't want this, we don't need this, we need the people back in the seats, just like it was coming back to work. It'd be like, hey, we need people here to like do the job. So yeah, so hopefully we'll get Monica back, but I'm going to ask one of our questions. It's kind of like a rapid just discussion question. Where's one place that you absolutely would use AI today? Like, what is the place that definitely need to use AI for that? There she is. Hi, Monica. So we're just gonna do our rapid question. Like, where is that place that you would absolutely use AI, and where would you absolutely not? I think you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. We hit on it a little bit about the 3D is definitely in the role of product readiness. And I think, but where do you see AI actually just working hands down and where like we need a little help, especially in the pattern area, but there is an AI tool for the pattern area. But let's see, what do you
Yeah,
guys think?
I'm not a big fond of using AI for creativity, like concepting. I
Mm,
think it's very essential to com- to make brands understand things need to be human, and creativity is something that's very in deep within us. This is my point of view, actually, but many people use it for concepting. I wouldn't do that, but I would use AI to help me explore variations, maybe
mhm,
color variations, final output of this garment, and see it more realistically so we can make better decisions in the end. And I also use in my workflow AI for example, PBR maps, right? To generate PBR maps. I get images from a texture on internet and garment, for example, because I receive a lot of images to create garments. And with that image, ChatGPT generates me a PBR map. So yeah, I would use for marketing videos. I would use for, speeding up this going back and forth process of taking decisions. What's more, a thing that will actually sell in the market. I would
Mm-hmm.
not use AI for creation, and as well for fit decisions, construction logics. I think that's very important to have our critical side of things, material performance as well. You need to understand about this when you are developing something, and that's very essential to us. So AI is great for asking what if, but humans actually must answer like, does this actually work? You know,
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I think we could keep this tool running and still keep humans in the market, and that's something that concerns me a lot. People need to show their talent, their creativity, their originality, their essence. And that's what we are missing with this AI generation. I've seen a post on LinkedIn of someone teaching you how to generate an entire collection from zero with AI. Like, where is the human touch, the originality, the creativity? Everything is machine based. And
Mm-hmm.
then what, you know? So we're kind of massificating everything just to sell out things, and originality is getting lost. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's a little like that was part of the misconception conversation earlier that yeah, maybe that could be done, but at some point there's a human saying yes. There's a human
Yeah.
saying, okay, put this out, or this looks
Yeah,
good, or
like
this looks bad.
I had a real
Somebody is doing something.
experience. I had a real experience with that because I worked with a very old company, and the owner of this company, he was like, okay, I asked ChatGPT to give me a sketch of shorts, a running shorts that would sell a lot. And if you look at it, he requested a sample of it. If you look at it, there were cuts in the crotch area with a mesh, it's very
Okay.
see-through. What is the logic behind this? And he was very convinced that that would sell out because AI said so. So,
Okay.
the critical thinking, and that really happened. I couldn't believe on what I was seeing,
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was like
Like,
the owner of a company, of a 70 years old company, and he was trusting entirely into AI. So this should
okay. Okay.
definitely not happen.
Yep. Cam, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, so I would do similar to everybody else. I wouldn't create your concepts in here. I would really just become a writer if you can on your own. Just spend your own time to become a writer. If you can spend 45 minutes writing and then the last 10 minutes is you fiddling with your LLM and then that last 30 seconds is you turning in something great, then great.
Mm.
I think that's what we should all kind of aspire. Um, I do think that like there's with every set of concepts or ideas, there is a plateau where like you say, how many variations can this really become, right? Like there's a square, there's a circle, there's a triangle, there's a line, there's only so many directions a line can move. And so I think when you don't want to do those repetitive micro tasks of doing variations and where there are a bunch of plateaus that you don't need to go and see on your own. And so I would say that is a great place to do it. And just in general, a lot of micros, if you could constantly think of what different micros you could be using. And the best one for me, I think, is that context is the hardest thing to manage. You could always say, oh, I don't think of like a note taker or anything like that, but text in general is something
Mm-hmm.
that you want to think about collecting. The same way we think about history, like if you're a history buff, that becomes kind of why you may invest in the market. But like to me, context and what you're working on, and one of the big things that I want to introduce to our platform are history tool, like people that help people understand tools about history, not just what you're working on right now. And so I would implore everybody to do this. It's not just my idea kind of thing. It's like all the design creative tools should help people look back in history and see if their idea has been used or someone's tried it or how did it go, because that's a lot of what context is knowing how certain ideas fared and knowing how people have reacted to something in the past. And so the more and more you can get context and save it for yourself, and I call those the micros, just a lot of micro moments where you can get AI involved. And then the macros, I would stay away from those right now. Like the things where a lot of people are selling you ideas and what this AI is going to do, that's a macro. It's like, oh, it's going to save your this or that. The main one I would focus on note taker, and how much value comes from a note taker is endless, and time management. So to me, time management is the hardest thing people deal with anyway. And so I would put that, I use mine first and foremost, time management and context, and then that'll automatically help your macros. Because I don't really know that unless it has this perfect chain API of decision making that it's ever truly hit a macro.
Wow. You really brought something to my attention, like the amount of historical documentation that goes into design work. I don't know, Monica, if you feel the same way, but you're trained to think historically. And I think that's something that's missing from the conversation of how much designers are trained to think, style history or, when the actual jabot collar was actually, created and where do we use that now? Or how can we, magnify it or modify it for today's design work? That is something that is truly unique to design. And I think, I'm not ready for AI to take over that part of it. But Matt, where is your take on use or don't use AI?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can teach AI a lot of things. You can give it notions about certain stuff. So like where would you use it? The Style 3D answer would be pretty much anything from design concept, right? If you're trying to get from a concept in your head to an image or from an image to a different kind of image, that works easily, right? Trying to take an uncanny render and make it beautiful and animated prior to having to commit a bunch of resources to photo shooting or even putting it out on social media. Beautiful use of AI, right? Excellent, efficient, and empowers people to do stuff that they couldn't without expending a bunch of money. Those are easy no-brainers of where to use AI. Where not to use AI, same stuff we've been saying. Anytime a human decision has to be made, you should not delegate that to AI. That's the equivalent of following your GPS into a lake, right? You need to be there to make that call to say, no, this is not the right way to go, actually. Actually, Claude, sorry, no, not the right way. Let's move on. And right, those are critical corrections. Those you cannot get to from A to Z without those corrections. And I think senior management needs to disabuse themselves of that notion that that part of things is a replaceable component. That human judgment is absolutely not. To go back to your question about where I've answered where I wouldn't use it. Where I would use it. Again, I would not use it for anything where real critical human judgment is required. Yet you can provide it context. You can give chat LLMs the history of pattern making and where any design was made and why and the history of it. But understanding why it's relevant to this context and understanding how to then also make it producible, profitable, and at the right price and meets the design brand specifications, right? That's a mix of things that right now AI is not coming anywhere close to. And to Cam's point and to Monica's point, there are lots of tools that can uplift individual mundane tasks, right? I've spent a long time, and I think everyone here who's worked with 3D has spent a lot more time assembling garments in 3D than they would like to, right? I know how to assemble front, back, left, right sleeve. I don't need to do it 400 times every time. So AI is doing a really good job at saying, cool, that work was done. Let's build on that. Those are easy wins where AI can and should be used. There's a million more, but I don't think we have the time.
Yeah, like I said, this conversation could morph and go into so many different things. And you guys know my take on AI and pattern making. It's a base, it's a start. It's not the end result or the end production. You still need a technical mind. You still need someone who knows how things are actually sewn and not in 3D. So I would definitely not use it for too many technical tasks. Definitely not for fit, maybe for fit vision, but you actually still need those samples on a body. And I think, technology is getting to the point where it's starting to touch those different areas with AI, but I still think you definitely need those hands-on experts to always say guardrails, right? You need the guardrails up, so that you don't throw a gutter ball, right? We need those things happening in AI right now so that people can learn what it does. I think there's so much hype right now whether it's career hype, whether it's tool hype, like we said earlier, there's so much noise around AI and what it should be used for in fashion, whether it's marketing, whether it's, AI tools that are coming, coming up and coming that are taking place of certain things. I think there's a saying out right now that there's an AI bubble. I don't really believe that there's an AI bubble. I believe it's a new tool. So, of course, it's going to get inflated and deflate, but I don't think it will pop. I don't think it will definitely disappear anytime soon in the next decade or, what have you. I think it's gonna be a learning curve on how everyone in the creative world can use it, can trust it, and what that trust means for your brand. I definitely think that. I think one of the things that our users wanted to know is how to handle the global curiosity. Because I found this with 3D and I find it with AI is that it's being introduced very fast. So it kind of makes people kind of stand off. It makes people kind of like, I don't know what I should do with this. How do I get started? I don't even know. Like Cam, you talk about writing and like learning how to write, what to write. I uncover that a lot in some of my posts, like not even knowing where to start with a prompt. Like, what is my idea? Like, how do I hash it out before, during, and after using AI? I think people want to know how can you approach AI in a global creative concept. So maybe Matt, you want to start there first. Like, what does that mean to
Yeah,
you?
I mean, I think we've touched on this already, and I think Cam and Monica and Darrell, you have kind of already touched on this. That the main leading skill for AI proficiency is communication, right?
Mhm.
That's the new emerging skill, is not just being able to say what you want, but to accurately communicate intent, right? That's a different thing. To actually
Mhm.
communicate what needs to be done, what needs to be said. Um, those are so it becomes less about what to write and more about the methodology to communicate yourself, to communicate your intention to an AI and to other people. And those skills are when you possess the ability to do both, you're invaluable at that level, right? You can speak to the AI and make it do what you want, and you can speak to others and make them understand what you're doing. Those are very, very valuable skills.
Yep. Cam, maybe you want to answer a little bit about that, about just a global overview of introducing AI into your creative space.
Yeah, Matt kind of brought up for a second earlier. You have to be. We're all now researchers. Kind of how I was joking about everybody on social media now is an executive producer. If you work at a company, you're also a researcher. There's no longer a role where you're not also a researcher. So, um, that being said, that cone of what you research, how many models are you looking at? What do they do?
Hmm.
What are your expected outcomes? I think, for me, I'm a designer who, I worked in game design, so my background includes 3D, includes film, and in games you have all this storytelling elements and things like that. So I think about how can I level up in the real around my skills that are going to help design product and film, essentially storytelling through film. And I'm looking at VO every week. I'm looking at Kling 2.6. And I'm learning. Okay, here are the leading models. There's websites I can drop a link. I have to find it first. That just kind of rank models every single week. You can Google that too. It just in general, we're all now researchers where we want all you're doing is, you're signing up for these free accounts where you can, you're spending $6, $7 where you can, and you're learning, what could $6, $7 get me? And I think a lot of times it could have gotten you $25,000 if you knew who to deliver that product to. But the question is now, like, can you back that idea up? Can you back up risk? Can you back up all the other things? And so slowing down and knowing those answers, being, like I said, being a writer and a researcher, we only have to be that now. Like if all the tools are eventually going to replace everyone's high end level skills, I make music. I've replaced a lot of my AI tools with AI tools. I don't master anymore. And so just constantly leading things from your task list that you don't have to be good at anymore, but then changing that for what am I doing in real life? And so to your point as well, Darrell, like um, I mean, in fashion, essentially the best outcome is everyone's a tailor, right? Everyone's a skilled tailor, but now we can make anything. And so, like, because I can use AI to do anything in the real world, I'm a skilled tailor. I can measure someone. I can look at all the materials. I can measure quality. I can do all the things with a physical person's body. But then now when AI comes, I'm really set up to be a perfect concentric circle of being able to manage anything online, anything in real life, and the in between of my expertise is now covered. So I would just try to slow step back, think about, okay, what is my cone of expertise? How do I stand on that expertise? And then now offset the things I don't have to do on my own. I don't have to take credit for, because I think we just were grown up to take a lot of credit and get a lot of titles and sound really smart. But now your titles are now replaced with how relevant are you? And I think it's just like social media. I keep bringing it up because we're essentially being pushed into a social media work environment where we're all become celebrities. We all have to become, you know, thought leaders, and so it is somewhat justifiable if you have the extra time, and AI is solving it for you. And I think if
Right.
you can be impressive enough to do that, then you're going to continue to succeed. And I don't think it's that hard. I think it's just more so, are you one of those people in history who was like, I don't know, and when the web came out and you didn't mess around WordPress and you didn't find out that there's some simple PayPal things you can look at, and before you knew it, you made $20,000 on selling shirts online and you weren't even looking, right? And so I think we're in that moment of like, you could throw something on the pan, look around, and then before you know it, you've done something really smart. It's just that testing and that trial phase of, I'm a researcher, I'm trying stuff. What models work for me? How can I learn? How do I get away from just learning about AIs? How do I learn about the infrastructure? What is a mirrored, disk? I don't know. Just really get into like, what is ASML? Like, if you have the time now, go learn about what the components are and how this actually, because it'll actually come to your mind a lot faster once you see the overall picture of like what it is they're actually offering you, and you'll realize it's not that big, right? And now, once you realize a language model is not all that complicated, but it has a lot of outcomes, it's less about what you could do, but more so what outcomes do you want, like what Matt said. So the more and more you give yourself the leverage to say, this is going to be the best outcome, and I want this outcome to come to life, we're going to be materializing things at a fast rate that are going to be great. But it's just, are you willing to be 55 minutes thinker and then 5 minute AI, and instead of the opposite?
Yep. So I'm going to start with one last thing, just because we didn't really touch on it. This was the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just to touch on the ugly a little bit. Responsibility, social responsibility, environmental responsibility of AI. If you guys can briefly touch on that, we're at an hour right now, but there's definitely time to chat. Um, there's a lot, my son also brings it up to me all the time, right? There's a lot of environmental damage being done by the use of AI. There's a lot of conceptual thought that AI is stealing creativity from other users, and the whole thing about being able to make Michael Jackson rap. Like, there's so many different things that can be done with AI, and it can be viewed as irresponsible. What is your guys' take on that? We'll start with Matt.
Um, yeah, so back to my earlier analogy about driving a car, right? It's up to everybody to decide how to drive the car, not to drive it into a lake, not to hit other people, right? These tools, just like everything, need to be in responsible hands.
Mm-hmm.
Responsible use looks like, again, being equitable. By the way, fashion industry is not in any position to really cast aspersions on efficiency here,
We're
right? We're
not.
one of
We're
the most
not.
wasteful
Definitely.
industries, if not number one or two, right, in the world. So what I see here is a huge opportunity for AI to replace what were otherwise insanely wasteful processes. Sample making, creating photos, all of that stuff costs energy, resources, money, water, all of that stuff is easy targets for AI to actually get us efficiencies that, while yeah, we're using a little bit more electrical grid to get that power. Maybe we're utilizing AI, and that looks relatively higher than what it looks like when we're using our computers. But I mean, come on, when we're making markers more efficient, when we're making fabric, when we're making products come to market without having to create huge piles of samples that get incinerated every year, that's a net win, I think, unequivocally.
Yep. Yep. I think so too. Monica.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. And I think that uh, besides that, companies also, I've posted about this, companies need to be very social responsible about, yeah, we're saying that fashion brands are not an example, a role model. Yeah. But it will be a starting point because this new generation of consumers are realizing like more human brands, more brands that care about environment are being taken into consideration. So how can you make that relevant for you? For example, if you are a big fashion brand and you can be loud about being social and setting boundaries, because we don't have boundaries right now for the usage of AI, right? In my country, we are seeing many things happening politically, with people like stealing and going, further with that. But if you look into creativity level, if being original, being human for a brand, I think that would be a relevant thing to be taken into consideration. Because otherwise, if companies fully automated, we're not going to have workers, we're not going to have future consumers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know where I heard it, but like if nobody has jobs, then who's gonna buy anything?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that is so true. That is definitely so true. Um, so let's see here. Cam, do you want to end us off with your thought on that? And then people are starting to sign off, so we're at an hour and we can wrap up after you, Cam.
Yeah, I think the safety part is important, that we all think about the human in the loop when we're making decisions. Like a lot of us have said, is making sure we're also not cutting out another decision maker when we're making our own decisions. Um, but in general, I think my experience with AI in general is that like a lot of new things, or a lot of what we're hearing is marketing, or it's a lot of new information is marketing. And I think honestly, the biggest people it's impacted is marketing, because we're able to put visuals out, we're able to put things out that marketing maybe used to spend a lot of money more. And so, in general, a lot of things, whether it's movies, I'm happy that a lot of money that was wasted on departments that doesn't necessarily need it to reach people. We didn't, it's really cool to me that we don't have to have $100,000 budgets to make a cool short film, right? And I think I used to see like, oh, someone made something for $1 billion, and I was like, was that actually worth it? Like, did we need to spend $1 billion to get that thing made? And so, and then even those numbers might be fake. And so, my big thing is that overall, how we spend and how we get things done is really the story for AI for me. And even how we entered AI was all about spending and spending, and it's going to prove at the end. And we're paying some 0.00% of a penny every time we use it, and that number is going to get smaller. And so as we continue to make that number smaller, we're only unlocking something that we all know is going to happen, which is gig work. And so as we enter a gig work economy where a lot of people aren't necessarily, relying on corporations to make money, we're relying on humans in real life and connection in real life. I'm not necessarily as worried about that. I'm more so worried about, making the mental health side of it, is making sure that like at a fair scale, nothing is happening. Slow down, no one flew through a window because of AI, and I get that, but at the same time, else, you have the same tools in your hand to go pickaxe this mine and see if there's some gold in as well. And so as longer you're afraid, the less likely you'll pick up that pickaxe. That's all I can right now. And if history is changing on you, the worst thing you ever want to be is a person who didn't choose the right part that history headed. So
Yeah.
I don't think that, like, I think we're going to adapt because people spent billions of dollars to find out what AI does. We're finding out pretty quickly that it only does a certain number of things. Investors overspent to find that out. Clearly, the market's going to not completely rebound, but it's going to rebound enough where we realize, hey, this is an augmented employee. We don't want to replace all employees. We want to augment them. We want to get more out of it.
Right.
And then we have more industries that are more remote, and there's less reasons for it being remote, or less things in the way of being able to complete your job and be able to share your outcomes. And so I think there's a lot of positivity as long as everyone jumps in with the same skill set. African American in America, my job first and foremost is to know that like where the ball is getting ahead and behind me, and so I have to be in making sure that I don't get too far behind, I don't miss some threshold. And so I think it's just we're all on the same footing right now, and we all need to level-headed, pick up the micros, try all the tools, don't be afraid. Some people are not going to know that it's AI that you made something, and I think in that moment it's up to you to decide, hey, should I just be making stuff and not telling anybody anything? I just need to make cool stuff and share it. And I think we'll stop talking about AI. We'll talk about it like we did SaaS or the web or Photoshop. Hey, it's Photoshopped. It's like, no one says something's photoshopped anymore. They're just like, hey, that is, I see it. So I think we're going to get to that point, and eventually, we'll all just have to empower ourselves to do
Yeah.
more community driven things.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. Thank you. I think this was an excellent, excellent talk, and I appreciate all of you for joining and offering up your thought and your opinion on the whole AI in fashion experience. I think one of the things that is a takeaway for me is to let creativity live, right? Wherever it's going to live. Is it going to live in 3D? Is it going to live in AI? Is it going to live in hands-on? Uh, I always remember a friend of mine she used to fight me when I was doing 3D, and she'd say, oh, I have to touch it. I can't have the fabric just in the computer. I need to feel how it drapes. I need to see what it's doing on the form. I think if that's your lane and if that's your expertise, go with that. Like, just because something is, exploding onto the scene, it doesn't mean that you have to stop your process. Are you going to do well by, opening yourself up to what it actually is and seeing how it does affect your creativity, see how it does affect your workflow? What could it do? What could making something in 3D versus making something in AI, what could that do with your process and what you're doing right now? Maybe you have a customer that only wants you to, you're a freelancer and they only want you to use AI, or they only want you to, use this in the creative process or not. They want you to actually go ahead and drape it. They want to see the muslin. They want to see, the actual physical garment. I think you have to open yourself up to all of the different expertise that you can have in the realm of fashion. And AI is just something that is on the scene now, and it's not make or break. It doesn't make or break the fashion industry. It's not going Fashion went through so many changes, from beginning to end. When the whole industry started, it's changed, it's evolved, and so have makers. And I think most everybody that's listening right now is a maker of some sort. And if that's what makes you thrive and what makes you excited, continue to make. Check out AI. Either you like it or you don't. Don't criticize other people who do it, right? Because that is a whole nother conversation. But, see what's out there. It's going to stay around for quite some time. Learn it. It's not a rush just because all of the hype. You don't have to rush yourself into it. You don't have to think that your skills are null and void because of the industry changing toward that. There are still people out there who do made to measure. There's still people out there who do all different types of, fashion, garment making, education, all of that kind of stuff. So it's here, utilize it or not. But thank you for listening and thank you for learning about AI. And hopefully we can do this again soon. And Digital Fashion Society will post this and it will be on YouTube. And thank you guys so much. And thank you to all the people who joined. It's awesome.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, you got it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Digital fashion society. Digital fashion society. Digital fashion society. Digital fashion society.